Welcome to Work from the Inside Out, a podcast that highlights real-life stories, practical strategies, and best practices for transitioning your career from unhappiness and dissatisfaction to fulfillment, meaning, and joy. Now here is your host, career and executive coach, Tammy Guler-Loeb.
Welcome, everyone. I am pleased to introduce you to my guest today, Esther Weinberg. Esther is the founder of MindLight Group. She empowers high-level executives in the entertainment and technology industries to build sustainable company cultures based on respect, safety, and trust. Using the Ready Zone framework, she coaches leaders through change with proven systems to reframe, refocus, and realign, and ultimately rise to lead. Esther creates breakthrough strategies for such companies as Netflix, Disney, Warner Brothers, Universal Pictures, Microsoft, CNN, and Imax. Esther has held executive positions at Disney and Fox. Please join me in welcoming Esther.
Hey, how are you today?
I'm doing great. Really happy to have you here. So, Esther, thank you so much for joining us from your office right in LA, is that right? LA?
Yeah, I'm in Los Angeles.
So we had a chance, of course, to talk before this interview. So I've gotten to learn a little bit about you and a number of the things that you're working on today. But I wanted us to take maybe a little bit of a stroll down memory lane first and talk a little bit about your background and some of the things you did earlier in your career. And I know that you've worked for, as we said in the intro, you've worked for a few different companies, but say a little more about some of the transitions you've made, even through some of those different companies, because a lot of them are entertainment companies, but I know that you've had different roles and different things you've done. So I'd love to hear about, what kinds of thoughts did you have as you moved from one thing to the next?
I started out my career not necessarily in the entertainment business, but it was in publicity and marketing. And I was working for an agency in New York City, which is where I'm from. And I was doing publicity and more marketing for products. It was general foods products. It was also for magazines and an array of things, not entertainment. And was doing that for quite some time. And then was fortunate enough to get the opportunity to be recruited by a woman that owned her own publicity and marketing agency. And she had represented many different entertainment brands. And, entertainment is a fun thought of what to go into.
Yeah.
Never dull. And we could talk about the industry in general. But at the time, I just thought it was a phenomenal opportunity. I mean, it was crazy to pass up. And so I worked for her for quite a number of years, doing a variety of entertainment-faced work, meaning that we did cable television at the time. I'm calling it cable television because at the time it was called cable. Today we call it something else. But back then it was cable television. We also did film. We did museums in New York and very high-profile work. And that was really fantastic. And then I left the entertainment industry because I kind of got a little bit burnt out. And I went to a financial organization, global financial company, and I was doing marketing and advertising and publicity. And it was funny at the time because I kept looking for entertainment news. And I thought, well, this is a disconnect. You're working for a financial company, you should be reading the financials, which I was. My go-to lever was still entertainment. So I thought there definitely is a missing. It's a passion of mine. And so it's time to get back into the business. And so I had phoned a friend who was at a cable trade at the time. And I told him that I was looking for an opportunity. And he said, as all great friends should say to you, there's a job open at Fox and you'll never get it. I thought, thank you. Thank you. Thank you for being so supportive. Actually, it was and I tell the story often about that moment with him because it was a great awakening for me because it really showed how little I had done to promote myself, to really showcase my strengths, my capabilities. I just thought because I did the work that someone would notice, which they do and don't, as you know, they do and don't. So I was leaving it up to the work, which, I love to work. think I'm a good worker, but it was.
Well, I also wonder, because you were doing, marketing, PR, the work is very visible. It would show what you've done. So I could understand why you would think that people might notice.
Yeah, it's a funny thing because it doesn't, meaning that it is a visible art, as people will tell you in that side of the business, and yet it is slightly invisible because lots of times people think magic happens. All of a sudden, a front cover story happens in the Wall Street Journal. Magic. No one ever worked on that for months. No one ever planted that story. It just happened. And so it also gave me a real appreciation for what happens for executives and leaders when you're in visible jobs and you could be in invisible jobs. And my job was highly visible. To your point, I worked with everyone across the board because my job really related to every single different division across the company.
Yeah.
However, it was a real backseat role. And so it could be clear that you could be behind the scenes more. And so it depends on your level of promoting. And I wasn't, at the time, it wasn't a high level job, right? I wasn't a vice president or executive vice president. And so it was as good as I promoted myself. Now, frankly, what was great was that when I went for the job at Fox and I got the job, it was great learning because I remember I looked at the job description and it was 3 pages, single typed. I think it was like a point font or something. And initially I was like, I would love this job. And
how many people are supposed to do this job?
Yeah, it was one of these Herculean jobs. It was fantastic. It was when Fox was launching FX. We launched out of a studio apartment in New York City. The set was a 6,500 square foot, fully functioning apartment in New York.
Oh my God.
A bedroom, a rec room, a ballroom. It was stunning. And it was a playground. Literally, I have to say, it was one of the greatest joys of my career because you got to be in this experience of this great place with this incredible talent and creatives. And then I left there and I went to Disney Channel. I moved out to Los Angeles, and Disney was building a global brand inside a brand, meaning that Disney Channel was kind of like on HBO. It was subscription-based. It was a very small pocket of people, about 14 million. And the mandate was to grow it to be a basic network and for everybody to see it and to have really diverse talent, diverse programming that would really hit a chord of resonance with children. And so we did it. It was unbelievable. I mean, of course, it's not me alone. It was an incredible team of people. It was just one of the most dynamic jobs I had, just like Fox. It was a startup in a big company.
That's a good point. I want to just pause for a minute and say, so, because I don't want to gloss over this. You were working out of technically a large apartment, right, for Fox in New York. And that had a bit of a startup feel, maybe even more than a bit of, if you're going in at 6:30 in the morning and working till, who knows what hours, right? So you were part of this very vibrant, creative, hardworking group of people. Sounds like you were enjoying it. How long were you at Fox at that point?
At Fox for about 3 years.
Okay.
And the just so I'm clear, we were occupying a building where the studio apartment was on the second floor and our offices were floors like 3 and up, 3 to 6 kind of thing. And the same thing with Disney Channel. The same thing had happened. It was funny because I remember about 6 months into my job, my boss and I we were sitting in her office and she said, we should retire. And I started laughing. I'm like, why should we retire? She goes, we've literally done everything in some respects for them publicly. And I think this is a good way to go out. I mean, we did it. But
I just moved here.
Yeah.
I was going to ask you about that. So you were at Fox for 3 years. You were building something. What occurred to you or what propelled you to want to leave? What are the factors that made you decide to make that kind of a move? That's a dramatic move on 2 levels. You're moving from one company to another, although it sounded like a very exciting opportunity. Was it something you went after, or did somebody recruit you, and
Yeah.
then also relocating. So I just curious what that shift was like for you. And it sounds like, clearly you did it very willingly, but, was it a difficult decision or a difficult set of decisions for you at the time?
Yeah, I think that it was, it was, it's funny because I would say that each move that I had made in my career early on now, before we start getting to the rest of it, but early on in my career, I'd say each move I made was because something in my gut said, you're ready for something else,
Okay.
or you're ready for some next level. Like you've gotten
Okay.
a place where you have the trust, the respect, you feel super safe here. You have a level of integrity that you're really doing your work out of. It's been exciting. You've done a really great job. And now there's something that you could take on. Now, for all intents and purposes, you could say that I could have done that at Fox because there was a lot happening. And so it could have been at the time too, personally.
Yeah.
I will say that too. I was going through a divorce. So there was a confluence of certain things. And the woman that was heading up the Fox entertainment brand, cable television entertainment brand at the time, was going to Disney. And she was taking a few people with her.
I see.
So it was so funny because we were doing at FX, we were doing a show in St. Paul, Minnesota. It was a reality show. It was about the St. Paul Saints. It's called Baseball Minnesota. And I remember I was sitting in an empty baseball field, and I just knew somehow if I told the person that was a mentor of mine that my life was changing, and also that there was a degree of readiness that I had felt and how I was feeling about the environment, was there and could there be a different opportunity? And then all of a sudden he was like, you gotta talk to this person. You gotta go to LA. And so I think it was the stars were aligned. That's what I think it was.
That's helpful to hear, because when you first said it, it was like, well, and then I went here and then I went there. And it's like, wait.
No. It doesn't happen.
Nobody moves cross country without giving it, some thought. And clearly there were some things going on in your personal life, which I appreciate you sharing that,
Sure.
Because it's like, yeah, you were ready for something different. But just saying, I was just ready for something else.
Well, I think too, and this is probably a philosophical conversation, I do think that when you change and when you decide to change, at least for me, it's, first of all, it's not always so glamorous. Let's be very clear about that. Change is not always glamorous. We're designed as human beings not to really facilitate and want to change.
Right.
But I will say that there have been times when it's really that there's been powerful change in my life, has been moment when my mind, not the conditions outside of myself, but when me, myself, and I, my mindset, my way of being has said, I feel safe. I trust myself. I respect myself to make a move now or to choose to do something else because I say so. Now, the world doesn't work just because Esther Weinberg says something all of a sudden. But I will say that, but I'll say that what it does is that it readies you. It prepares you to be open for something new to come in. Because without it, it's very difficult for something to come in and for you to be open enough to realize it and to capitalize on it.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
I knew it at the time, but especially looking back now, I really feel very grateful. And I also feel they've been chances of a lifetime. Going to work at Fox in the place that I was at, in the inflection point that it was an opportunity of a lifetime. To go to work at Disney, the happiest place on earth, where you have this
and magical too.
And magical, of course. Have a magical day. They always say when they transfer you on the phone. So having the opportunity to be able to work for such big brands, to be able to launch smaller brands within them, to be able to see them not always take flight just because you're part of something bigger, but to be able to strategize and to be able to how do you align how do you coalition build with different people within the brands, because you need lots of people. And it's almost like it's family and it's still a business. And so you still have to get buy-in. You still have to influence people. You still need to have your own level of visibility. That opportunity at Fox really taught me a lot about my own level of visibility. And so how that helps not just myself, but the organization and my team. And so there were lots of great lessons. And so going to Disney was a gift. It was a gift in many ways.
And we know that you didn't stay at Disney.
No, we didn't. No, I did not. Yes. Yeah. I moved on. So about 3 years and I had left and started my own company probably about 4 months after I had left Disney, I would say. I think,
was that your intention when you left Disney to start your own company?
Oh God, no. No, not initially. It kind of happened very oddly, meaning that I had wanted to leave. My boss we had come to a conclusion that we both wanted me to leave. And so it was a mutual parting of the ways. And so initially I thought I was going to start my own publicity agency. And after about a week trying to drum up business, I realized I don't want to do this. I really don't want to do this.
A whole week, huh?
Yeah. I think it was the kind of thing where, when you were just working really hard and you're under a lot of stress and you're not really taking care of yourself and you're doing right things and wrong things all at the same time. Yeah. And you're not looking up. I think that's what happened. And so once I got into a rhythm of, I gotta go, I gotta build some, I had never started a company before. And so I know I gotta get business. I didn't have a mentor. I didn't know what I was doing. So I gotta do this. And so by Friday, I remember I was in a meeting and this had never happened to me before, never happened to me since. I was talking, they were talking and their mouth was moving. And in my head, I was like, please shut up, just shut up. Shut up. Episode. And it was nothing about the person. It was just my level of you only have so much reserve. You can only take so much that you had to empty some stuff out. And so I just thought, I got to get away. And so, I had taken a long vacation. I went away to 5 weeks to Asia, to Thailand, Vietnam, and Malaysia. And I came back. I was like, okay, now I can focus. Yeah. And so after a confluence of lots of different events, I started my own. I discovered leadership development. I discovered executive coaching. And I really had felt like it was everything that I had been doing coming together in a very precious way, in a way where I think I had always valued people development. Maybe I didn't know, I don't know if I knew the mechanics of it, right? The mechanics of putting it all together. So this was a very good way for me to actually be trained and developed in it, and then to be able to deploy it for others. Because I had a real understanding of where people, executives and leaders were coming from, because I'd stood in those shoes, I had done it. And so it was a very different mindset about how I can go and create an impact with having a business.
So at that point, you just started to build from there.
Yeah, I would say what happened was that I started to build a company called MindLight Group. And what was really clear, I think it was not as clear initially, more clear now, where we're really all about, our vision is to make sure that the culture in the workplace is valued, where respect, safety, and trust are as important as measured as the bottom line. That was really important to us to start right away. So I started building. And then part of me also, I started getting a keen interest in international development. So I would go off on side projects while I was running my business here in the US. I worked with the Department of Geological Survey in Botswana. I did a body of work in Israel with negotiating conflict between social workers and management at a large school district in Netanya. So this was important work to me to continue to do global work. So in 2008, I had made a life decision. I packed up everything, and I moved to Uganda, Africa, and decided to run my business from Uganda, Africa, because I had seen at that time that I could do international work, the same kind of work that I was doing here, do it there on the front line from a country that was emerging from conflict, and maintain my business here in the United States with entertainment companies. So that was really powerful. I went to Uganda to do an assessment to assess an organization. It was the largest child rights organization in all of Africa, how effective they were and the effectiveness of children's rights, while also dealing and working with entertainment companies back here.
A little bit of a contrast.
Yeah. Well, it is and it isn't. I'll tell you why. And I know it may sound far afield, because I remember when there was, and this stands out of my mind, we were doing this assessment and I was interviewing a social worker. And she said to me, remember we were talking about kids. And so I said to her, what were some of the worst abusers of children's rights that she had seen, and what are some of the cases? And she told me the story about a stepmother, because stepmothers were some of the worst abusers of children's rights. A stepmother who had, she and her daughter were living with, her new husband and a few of his kids from a former marriage. And the mother didn't like this one boy. So she persuaded her daughter, her biological daughter, to take a sawed-off jerry can, fill it with hot boiling oil, and pour it over the boy's head. And so there was a hole that was made in the boy's head as a result of the oil. Now, you could say to yourself, okay, that has nothing to do with an organization. That has nothing to do with organizational dynamics. It has nothing to do with workplace. But I will say it has to do with what I realize is one thing is how we value people and how we value life. Doesn't matter if it's a small boy or someone in our workplace. How we value them, what we bring and how we value them, who we're being and how we marginalize or don't marginalize people. It doesn't matter whether they're a small child in Uganda or they're an executive vice president or an assistant at an entertainment company in Los Angeles. The value of human life is precious, and how we value that human life is really critical. And how we create environments of trust, respect, and safety is incredibly critical. Now, obviously, two extreme, polar opposite examples, like, leading a team in an entertainment company,
right?
Child in a dysfunctional family, clearly that had massive problems.
Right.
But I will say that what I really found in Uganda that made it very clear to me is that people are people. A person that I worked with at Uganda Child Rights NGO Network, they want the same trust, respect, and safety in their workplace, with their family, in the work that they do, in their relationships, just like someone who lives in New York, Chicago, or Boston, or Paris, or London, or Singapore. It doesn't really matter. So that's where the through thread of it all, I guess it crystallized for me more when I was in Uganda, to have that awakening and realization.
Yeah. And I know that I'm just I just want to fill in like a blank here, just to be sure we're following this. So part of what you did, I'm guessing, after you left Disney is, I believe you also did go for some executive coaching training.
Yes. So when I left
Disney, I want to connect between marketing, PR, some of the...
So when I left Disney, and I was in this process of discovering what's going to be next, because it wasn't so clear to me once I decided that it wasn't going to be publicity anymore.
Right.
What I had hired an executive coach. What happened was I had stumbled on executive coaching as a modality. At the time, people weren't really doing it, or they weren't really calling it that necessarily.
Yeah.
So I had stumbled on it, and I had called a few of the organizations that had training programs that were credited by the International Coach Federation, which is the gold standard governing body of all coaching at the time and still today. And so I had interviewed a woman, and she said, look, I think you need to work with a coach. I'm not available. You got to call this person. So I did. I called this woman, I hired her. And in the first session, she goes, look, I got to tell you, it's pretty clear to me. I don't know if it's clear to you. You need to be an executive coach. She's like, it's in your DNA. She said, and I think you should sign up for one of the schools that really resonates for you, that's accredited, and be trained. And the one thing I didn't want to do is I didn't want to just say I was coaching without having really, really profound training. And so the program I had found was the most arduous, the most rigorous coaching program that was out there at the time. It was about a 3-year program. I think I completed it in 2 years. And it was also international. That was really important to me too. Not just have a rigorous program that had high standards, also for it to be international. So all my classes had people from all around the world on them all the time. So this way you weren't just learning about what are the cultural nuances in your environment. You were learning them, what were they like in Sweden and Taiwan and
Right.
Korea and in Paris. It was incredible. It was absolutely incredible.
Yeah. So, and then how did you get interested in the work in Uganda and all that? Well, how did that come into play?
Yeah.
Because that's a whole different, I would say, a whole different level of interest in international work, right?
Yeah, I think yes, and it's yes and no, because when I had, well, let me dial something back. When I was working at Fox, at the end of the time I was working at Fox, I started to discover this love I had of travel. I mean, real absolute passionate love, and I mean exploration, not just going to cities, but I mean really going to third world countries, living with tribes, discovering the humanity of people. Like, it was just a driver of mine, no matter what. So interviewing, so I would go places. I was like a journalist. I would interview people. I would write notes, and I wasn't writing an article. I wasn't writing a book, but it was from my own context and knowledge about how do people live and how do they view the world and how do they view society and what's really important to them and what's not important to them. So I wound up traveling a lot. So during the time that I had been in corporate America, I did lots of different trips. But I remember as I was discovering coaching and in my groups, study groups, and as we were talking about different cultures, I just remember thinking that it would be unbelievable to be able to do this work and to do it in other countries. But also, how can you do it in places that could really benefit people? So my trial balloon was in Botswana. I had gotten a brief engagement with the Department of Geological Survey. I had connected with one of the team leaders. He and I really hit it off. And I was going to Botswana, and I said, I'd really love to, I would be thrilled to do some work for you. And he was all about it. And so I came out to Botswana, and he took me, and I said to him, look, if I want to do something with your team, but here we had talked about what would be of value. And then I said, but I can't just come out and meet your team. It's going to be like, the gringo coming out to meet the team. I said, I want to experience some of the work that you're doing in the field, because I'm speaking to people that are doing the work in the field. So I want to at least experience it, so I know when I go and stand in front of them that I can say, hey, I saw you did this and that, and I'm curious about this. And so that's what happened. I went out. I was with them for about 5 days, went out into the middle of nowhere, literally, like without a GPS, would have found you. and then I did a day session with his team, like a half day session with his team, but we made it a whole celebration because they had never done anything for their team at all, anything to bring them closer, anything to even celebrate all the work that they had done. And they were in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
So we really created some transformation. So when I came back from Botswana, I was like, wow, this is incredible. How do I do more of it? So then I got this gig in Netanya in Israel, doing it for 30 days. And I speak fluent Hebrew. So that was it. Botswana, it's an English speaking country, but in Hebrew, I don't speak fluent Hebrew every day. So to negotiate between friction between different bodies of people and to be able to do it in another language and to really understand and have mastery over it, it was incredibly challenging. But it was, and at the same time, it was incredibly rewarding. So I did that for a month. And then when I came back, I thought, there's something here that I want to do more permanently, but I can't do it while simply being here. I have to be in another country to do it. And so at the time, I was also doing volunteer work for an organization in Los Angeles called Jewish World Watch. And they're a human rights organization, and they were really promoting the whole genocide that was happening in Darfur. So I was one of their speakers to raise awareness. So I had met several people who had worked in Africa. And so that's how that all started.
Now the pieces are fitting together.
Yeah.
I see.
It should make more sense now. Yeah.
So in 2008, you moved to Uganda. How long did you live there for?
I was there for about a year. I was going to move there permanently, but I was doing an assessment for a United States government project for malaria, AIDS, and tuberculosis. So I was evaluating the effectiveness of an organization and how they deploy drugs, to malaria, AIDS, and tuberculosis drugs. And it was tough. It was a tough assessment. And I remember I was standing on a veranda and I was with my laptop and I was typing away. And I just got this intuitive knowing that I had to come home. And I had promised myself when I went to Uganda, I would listen to that voice more. And so that's what happened. I picked up and came home. Simple as that.
Wow.
People thought I was nuts. My Ugandan friends were like, what are you talking about? You were incorporating, you were finding a more permanent place to live. Like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
I said, I can't explain. I'm going back to Los Angeles.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was about, 10 years ago, 11 years ago.
Yeah. And here we are.
And here we are. So MindLight Group has been going strong ever since.
Yeah. It's a funny thing because I would say that we've evolved and morphed and shifted. Probably about a year ago, I sat down to really think about, as you probably do when you're at certain junctures in your business, I thought, what's really the one thing that's been the common through thread for everything that if you were going to champion anything at this point in your work and in your life and your career, what would that be? And it came back to this notion about trust, respect, and safety.
Yeah.
We value people inside of organizations. And that what was so interesting to me is the timing. Because if you look at the economy and if you look at the state of way business is now, and I'll just take the entertainment industry right now, because look, workplaces have become more complicated because of technology, generational differences, there's instantaneous shifting consumer behaviors, there's data to drive decision making, there's politics, which we won't get into, there's economies of scale. But if workplaces are going to continue to innovate, drive new products and services, that how we put emphasis on people is crucial. Like if you say that to anybody, they'd nod and say, of course, that makes a lot of sense. But I would say that we're looking in the wrong place to be more agile. Meaning that if we're looking at how do we be more agile, we'll be more agile if we give people a skill, if we teach them how to be great leaders. Well, that's nice, but unless we give them the tools to feel, first of all, in themselves, that feel trust, respect, and safety no matter where they go, if they themselves feel that then they can bring that to any situation no matter what, then that creates a level of readiness.
Right.
And so that's where we started to create this whole framework called the Ready Zone.
Yes.
So that's the framework where we talk about where this is paramount. So, we commit that we move people from, confusion to clarity and passive to powerful and ineffective to influential, and leave people really feeling ready and powerful. Because once people feel even the slight taste of it, they want more of it, and they have a low tolerance of it not being there anymore. So that's where I would say that, we've evolved and shifted and changed.
So how are you bringing that to the work that you're doing now?
I would say that what we're doing is creating this, we've created this Rise to Lead innovation framework, and it's really about how do you empower high-level executives or medium or front-level executives to reframe, refocus, and realign, to be able to really to empower people to thrive through change. And this whole trust, respect, and safety that I said, but what we did was the way organizations run themselves is through KPIs, key performance indicators, as you know, we're very familiar. So we've created 6 zone performance indicators. So we feel like those are paramount for profitable growth, and they need to be leveraged. So the 6 are: there's change ready, influence ready, resolve ready, impact ready, culture ready, and connect ready. So the degree to which you can train, develop, and measure, and that is the degree to which we've seen that an organization can really stay innovative, creative, and profitable at the end of the day.
So that kind of work you would be doing with a team or with an entire organization?
It can be on an individual level. It can be on a team level. It can be on an organizational level. So I'll give you a small example. So let's say, as an example, I'm working with an executive, and it's really crystal clear that while she's now taking, and this is a true story, taking over this and creating a whole global division for an international team and creating it from scratch, never been created before. She has the resources to be able to do it for a large scale company. She has not created boundaries around the work. So as you can imagine, especially in a work that's global, in a work where it's pioneering, in a work that's entrepreneurial, once again, she's creating a brand in a brand. So you're going to need some boundaries in order to be able to grow. So for example, we set a boundary like between 8 p.m. and 8 a.m., no email. And that may sound very simple to most people, but not to others, especially if you're the president of an organization, you're leading, you're creating, you're striving to do something. That time frame allows her to do a few things: decompress, sleep, get up, exercise, energize herself so she can take on the day. If she didn't have that, she'd be a mess.
Yeah.
So that is something, like I said, very small on an individual level.
Yeah.
Take it to a team level.
Yeah.
Let's say a team has been thrown together, group of people go work together. Like I have that now. I have a group of people that have been thrown together. They created a company together, that they formed together, but they have never actually sat down to say, what are we really committed to creating together?
Oh,
What is the impact that we want to make together? And what are the ways in which we're going to agree, in which we're going to operate together in order to make our teamwork powerful? So unless that is articulated and stated, you're going to have people. No, I'm not saying that it won't work, but it won't work as efficiently or as high performing. And you're going to have conflict along the way that doesn't have any guidelines or guardrails to be able to resolve the conflict. So people will do things like go around each other. They won't talk directly.
Well, I think you're saying that very nicely. I think if you have a group of people who've come together and haven't established even some baseline guidelines, that you really, it's going to be messy. I mean,
it's really messy. And well, it's funny because even with teams, what I've noticed, teams that get together and they're really strong people, individuals. And when you give them this, and they've been working together for a while and doing a really great job, really, for the most part. And then when you do what we're talking about, it's night and day.
Yeah.
Efficiency, proficiency, night and day. So that's an example of, from the individual level, what we're talking about, the 6 steps, from an individual level to a team level, and then just imagine bringing that to an organizational level.
Right. And it makes sense. I mean, it makes sense that you can see how one can permeate the other too.
Absolutely.
That's very exciting. Now, are we also allowed to even mention that there will be a book coming out that talks about this?
You can mention it. I have been loath to say it just because I want to make sure that, because I have been probably a serial writer for a while, but I'll say that, yes, there is a manuscript and we're
committing you to it now. As far as I'm concerned, Esther Weinberg, there is a book coming out that is going to be articulating a lot of what you have just beautifully articulated.
Yes.
And it's going to be a resource that's going to be available to people and really help a lot of people just the way you're helping people now. So we don't know exactly when it will be available, but we do know that that it's something people should keep their eyes and ears open for. Is that right?
Yeah. I mean, we are hotly in the editing phase now. So there is a body of work that's being edited now.
So Esther, this has been, I mean, I love your story. I love the journey you've been on. And I'm wondering, if you were to be offering a few words of wisdom or a piece of advice to somebody who was kind of wondering what their ready zone was looking like right now. And they were thinking, I've got that little voice in the back of my head telling me it might be time to think about something else. What would be a key piece of advice you might give them?
I think one of the first things that I would do is I would sit down and I would articulate my legacy. Now, I want to be clear about what I mean. Oftentimes when we talk about legacy, it's something that I want to own a hospital. I want to be chairman of the board. I want to die and I've got $50 million in the bank that I can give away to a charity. That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is when you articulate the legacy to which you're living into, you actually then live into it. I believe that it's a context for everything.
Yes.
And then you've got a frame. Lots of times people talk about your personal brand. I actually think you need your legacy first because that becomes a context of everything you're living into. everything gets tucked into that. It's a lens that you can look at the world from and know if you're doing it or not. And you can then, like I said, reframe, refocus, realign to a better way.
Yeah. I love it. Thank you. That's great.
Thank you, Tammy. Really appreciate it. It's great today.
Yeah. So if people want to follow your work or learn more about what you're up to, what's the best way for them to do that, Esther?
Super simple. You go to mindlightgroup.com. So mind like in your head, light like a light bulb, group like all of us, mindlightgroup.com. And there's everything there.
All right. Well, thank you so much for being here today.
You got it. Thanks so much, Tammy.
I hope you enjoyed my interview with Esther Weinberg. I was so inspired speaking with her and felt as if I could have continued to go further into our conversation. What is your key takeaway from our interview? Is there something you'll put into action this week that you'll benefit from for years to come? Share what resonated with you in the show notes at workfromtheinsideout.com. Look for episode 038. That's also where you'll find all the links and resources from today's podcast. Are you thinking about what's next for you? Ready to consider your options or begin a process of exploration to get the clarity, energy, and plans you need to move forward? I am piloting a small group for 4 to 6 professional women who are curious, willing, and ready to engage in a 3-month program that offers the information, inspiration, and support you need to get where you are going next. Cohorts are beginning in mid-September 2019. By the completion of the group, you will be refreshed and ready to take on new endeavors. Are you interested? Do you have questions? Contact me through my website or via email, and we will schedule a conversation to explore the possibilities. I still have room in my September groups. If you were inspired by this episode with Esther, please share it with your friends and colleagues. And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss next week's show. And don't forget, subscribing is always free. Are you enjoying the podcast? I'd love to read your review on Apple Podcasts. It's easy to find my page at tammygoularloeb.com/Apple. Thanks so much for listening. And remember, it's never too late or too impossible to increase your sense of fulfillment and satisfaction in your work and other meaningful activities. Let me know how it's going for you. And who knows, maybe you'll be my next interview on this podcast. Bye for now.
Thank you for listening to the Work from the Inside Out podcast. For more information, you can find us at www.workfromtheinsideout.com.